Easily once the most hated man in hockey, Sean Avery was talented at putting on a persona, as in being an NHL pest during his career. As a forward, easily perfected being a grade A agitator, as in someone who mastered the art of pushing his opponent's buttons with ease. But if you are a player who's willing to straddle the line and consistently troll, well, you're probably going to get some resistance a good time or two. In this video, we're going to go over a handful of NHL players that have a definite motive to hate Sean Avery. And with that, here are 5 players that hate Sean Avery. It's 2003, and the Kings selected Dustin Brown as the 13th pick in the NHL entry draft. Brown, who enticed management with his strong work ethic and power forward tendencies, debuted for the 2003-2004 season. But also in the roster was Sean Avery himself, who had been traded from the Detroit Red Wings during the season before. Teammates or not, though, Avery quickly began targeting Brown, who, according to previous accounts, was a shy, soft-spoken teenager just trying to find his way and mature as a player. And according to multiple sources, including an article from NBC Sports, which I'll link below, Brown began to open up about his altercations with Avery after he was traded to the New York Rangers. Inside the article, Sports Illustrated detailing what happened, it reads, Brown lisps. He had lisped for as long as he can remember, although the speech therapy he went through as a 5th grader helped him learn to control it. But in dressing rooms, the lisp made him an easy target early in his career. Sean Avery, an occasional line mate of Brown's from 2003 to 2007, would insert the needle. Ian LaPierre, who played with Brown during his rookie year, is quoted saying, "This was bullying, like you might see in high school." But unfortunately, Avery didn't stop there, and actually targeted Brown's girlfriend at the time as well, according to the article, as Avery didn't think she was, quote, glamorous enough to be the girlfriend of a hockey player in Hollywood. And according to Nicole, Brown withdrew from his teammates and was the last to come to the rink for a while. And when asked about the incidents, Brown said, quote, "Maybe it affected me in ways I didn't realize," end quote. Therefore, knowing all of this and taking it into context, I think anyone that endured treatment such as this at the hands of another person would have some resentment to a degree, even if they aren't willing to admit it. After Sean Avery was declared to be making his way down south to the Lone Star State, of course, reporters were all over a potential story. Brendan Morrow becoming teammates with a guy that he'd expressed distaste for on multiple occasions by saying things like, quote, "I've made comments in the past or my dislike for him, but that probably puts a feather in his cap. He did his job, and I have said that I hated him. And I imagine that if we wouldn't have signed him, I would have still hated him," he says. These quotes were also backed up with the fact that these two had been in multiple rather intense scraps prior to Avery making Dallas his new home. Take from it what you want, but months after Avery joined the Stars, the team came to a consensus to buy out Avery's contract, which ultimately sent him back to the Big Apple to play for his last NHL team before retirement. But before Avery would suit up for the Rangers for his first stint, he was with the Los Angeles Kings in September of 2005. And it was then, before the 2005-2006 season officially began, that the spotlight was already back on Avery, and also his team, after the forward decided to make some rather questionable comments while conversating post-game. Avery, after witnessing his opponent deal out a hit on his teammate at the time, Jeremy Roenick, he responded with some rather controversial comments while saying, quote, "I think it was certainly a clean hit. It was typical of most French guys in our league with a visor that run around and play tough but don't back anything up. I think if a guy like Brett Hull was coming up the middle, somebody probably would have stepped up and hit him. But like I said, a typical move from a guy wearing a visor that certainly doesn't like to get scratched at all," he says. Therefore, well, if took that personally, despite Avery's half-hearted apology later on, I could understand why. I mean, you knew this one was coming, right? It was just a matter of time, really. Now, we all know trolling your opponent in the NHL, especially if you're a pest, is the name of the game. In fact, it's how they operate. Sometimes they'll chirp each other on ice, and other times they'll resort to the media as an outlet. Well, technically, you could say that that's what Avery did, but his reasoning for doing so this time around was far from just usual on-ice antics, as Avery decided to take some very personal jabs at former Flame DION while he was still with Dallas. Following a practice on game day in Alberta, Avery used the media's cameras as his personal means for revenge. Not only were his sights directed on getting back at PHANEUF, but more importantly, his ex-girlfriend, Elisha Cuthbert. As Cuthbert, now PHANEUF's wife, was dating the former defenseman at the time, Avery was in town in Calgary. Therefore, Avery didn't hold back while saying, "I'm really happy to be back in Calgary. I love Canada. I just want to comment on how it's become a common thing in the NHL for guys to fall in love with my sloppy seconds. I don't know what that's about, but enjoy the game tonight," he says. PHANEUF didn't exactly appreciate Avery stirring the pot while replying with a very disrespectful comment. "The league took action, and I agree with the way the league took action today," he says. PHANEUF was referring to the fact that, at first, Avery was suspended indefinitely by the league, which the league itself later amended the suspension to 6 games. And here we are. We finally made it to the highly interesting and entertaining rivalry that ended up forcing a new NHL rule to be made. Yes, during round 1 of the 2008 playoffs, things quickly heated up between Avery and the Devils star netminder, as during what was supposed to be a typical 5-on-3 power play was anything but. Avery, who was taking the net front presence role, decided to step things up and to deliberately wave his stick in front of Berger as a means of distraction. The Rangers scored and later won the series in 5 games. And one indicator that Berger wasn't an Avery fan was the fact that he refused to shake his opponent's hand in the handshake line. Gee, I wonder why. Well, it wasn't long after the fact that Avery decided to take the rivalry a step further when asked about the handshake refusal, as he replied with, "Everyone talks about how unclassy I am, and Fatso there just forgot to shake my hand, I guess." And in case you thought this rivalry fizzled out, well, guess again. After Avery decided to try out his luck on Dancing with the Stars in 2014, a reporter from NJ.com asked Berger if he had watched any of the program, and he replied with, "I didn't watch. I don't watch those shows. But I was watching NHL Network and they mentioned it. What more could he do to embarrass himself? There it is," he says. And of course, Avery decided to retort with his former nickname for the netminder as he took to Twitter to say, "Woke up beside a supermodel to hear that Fatso made a comment." So yeah, there's definitely no love lost between these two. Am I right?
Marty's a big whiner. He's always been a big whiner, and you just got to play through it. And I'm going to be in his face all night.